Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Michael Coe and we are unboxing Tiny Epic Dungeons, the Deluxe Edition, and Tiny Epic Dungeons, the Stories expansion. These units are some of the very first units hot off the press. So you'll see here Deluxe is indicated by the sticker on here. This is going to include the Deluxe content, which in this case is the Potions and Perils content. So let's dig in and see what we have inside here. I know many of you are wondering how in the world are we going to fit miniatures in these boxes, so I'm excited to show you the magic here. Alright, so we'll start with the base game. We'll toss stories aside for now. We'll come back to that. Alright, so we see right up, we got that nice thick box as always, a kind of a Tiny Epic signature there. And we got the nice spot UV across the front and the sides as well. Oh, somebody's trying to call me. We'll ignore that for now. All right, let's dig in. All right, as we like to do with our Tiny Epic games, we always feature a nice piece of illustration on the inside cover, just kind of a nice touch, just a little bit of thematic immersion there. All right, along the sides, we have a couple of other Tiny Epic games as well as Dungeon Heroes. All right, nice table of contents in this rule book here. Help guide you through the rule book. We have plenty of illustrations. Also, what's really nice about this particular rule book, which is kind of first for a Tiny Epic, is this back page folds open. And that is an icon reference guide for you to kind of have out during play if you'd like. We also have kind of a more abridged icon reference guide on some of the character cards for characters that are not in the game. But for all players to be able to have access to see what the icons do, we've included this in the back of the rulebook. Okay, right on top here we have the Potions and Peril content. That's the Deluxe content. And there you kind of see how it's all packed inside. And there are the nice fancy miniatures. Let's pull those out first. Let's get right into that, huh? We have 8 different character miniatures that come in the base game. See if I can give you kind of a close-up look here. May not be all that focused, but very nice, highly detailed miniatures. All right, and this nice Serenity Pantone, which is a Pantone of the Year, looks really nice on these miniatures. Gives them a nice unique look. Alright, now we've got a huge bag of wood components. It's going to include your health trackers, the disarm, trap tokens, your boss figure, hearts, and then all the little minions. You got your ooze, and your troglodyte, your skeleton warrior. Got a whole bunch of those, and then your torch tracker. And 4 little goblins, numbered 1 through 4, because you will be referencing their numbers throughout play. And then some lightning bolts to indicate your focus. Just a ton of nice premium wood pieces. Has a really nice smooth feel to it, printed on both sides. All right, we'll set those aside for now. The nice fancy dice. Thank you again for all your feedback on the dice. I think we ended up with a really nice set of dice here in really beautiful colors. The numbers pop, all the little icons pop. Lots of nice contrast. Very thematic dungeon dice there. All right, then we got a huge stack of cards. Here's going to be your boss cards as well as your character cards. And then just a black lining, just to kind of keep it nice and sleek on the inside of the bottom there. Let's jump into these guys first. All right, so we got our dragon, Hydra, Goblin King, the Pharaoh, the Gorgon, the Seer. These are the bosses. I'll have 8 bosses in the base game. Or sorry, 6 bosses in the base game. And the back here shows you kind of a little guide for if you're playing 1 to 2 players, 3 players, or 4 players, how many minions you're going to have to destroy before you can unlock this door and enter the boss's lair. And these cards will function as the boss's lair, as well as providing all the relevant information for the boss and their stats, and keeping track of their health. All right, and then we have our character cards. This is where we have the 8 characters. The back of these cards, like I was telling you earlier, this is kind of the abridged reference guide for the icons. So being that there's 8 characters, if you're playing a 4-player game, each of you can have a character as well as each of you can have a reference card. Kind of go through and show you each of the different characters here. And then we have our torch map. So we have Act 1. The game kind of takes place over 2 acts. The first act is when you're exploring through the dungeon. You'll see you've got your goblin markers up here. That's how you'll know if you have a, whatever goblin in particular has come out. You'll place it up here over the first goblin, and then that will mean that this goblin in the dungeon is representative of the goblin there. You'll move your torch down this track, keeping track of your time, of course. You want to make sure you get through the dungeon in a timely manner before you reach the end of the track. And when you enter the boss's lair, you'll flip this over to Act 2, where the torch will start back up at the top, and you'll have a certain amount of time as well to then defeat the boss, if you can. All right, and let's bust into these cards. So this is going to consist of your dungeon cards, goblins, minions, and the loot cards. All right, so you got your goblins right up top there. Pokey, boomy, stabby, shooty. There's the back of the card for the goblins. And your loot. Got a whole bunch of different loot cards, 26 loot cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Then you got your sets of loot as well. You got your little set bonuses down here. If you can collect multiple pieces of the same set, you're going to unlock additional benefits and abilities for your character, which is super fun to try and seek out. Also kind of creating different combos, having 2 pieces of, the bear set mixed with 2 pieces of the lion set and things like that, and exploring different combos of loot is a lot of fun. And we have our minions. Each of these, again, are represented with one of these really nice screen printed wood tokens. And then down into the dungeon. This is the boss's room, and we have a whole slew of different dungeon rooms that you will be exploring and encountering. Treasure rooms, trap rooms, minion rooms. And then last but not least are the spells. This back of the spell, this is the dungeon entrance card. I didn't show you the back of the loot card there. Back of the minion card. And the back of the dungeon cards. And then, yes, your spells. Very powerful spells. Tricky kind of spells. Some AoE, some direct damage. Some spells that are extra powerful but come with risks. Some healing spells. All right, so that is all of the content in the base game, and then we have the Potions and Perils Deluxe mini expansion. This will come in its own little baggie. It's going to include a couple of additional minion tokens that you can shuffle into the deck. The minions and the loot, well, the Potions and Peril doesn't include any loot, but the minions and the bosses and the goblins and the dungeon room, that can all be played. That can just be shuffled right into the base game content without including the rules for the potions. If you're going to have the Mixie's Lab, the dungeon room, you'll want to include the potions. But it's kind of a a la carte, you can just play with the extra goblins if you want, or just the extra minions, or kind of mix it all in. So there's your potion cards. These are going to be one-time use in the game. They give you really nice bonuses, extra actions or extra health, extra defense. There's the back of the potion card. A couple of mixy goblins. This new goblin is particularly nasty. He does give you a potion. The peril aspect of the game comes in actually when you acquire these potions. There's going to be a peril listed at the top, and that's going to be something nasty. But then the benefit of the potion far outweighs the peril. But of course, if you pick up a very particular potion at the wrong time, it can really spell bad news for you. So you want to make sure that your team is ready when it's time to grab a potion. And then there's the extra dungeon card, the extra dungeon room for Mixie's laboratory. Then you get a couple of additional bosses as well, the Lich and the Demon Lord. All right, and that is the deluxe content. So that is everything that's going to come in the deluxe game of Tiny Epic Dungeons. I'm going to just try and not so gracefully move all of this out of the way so I can dig into the stories expansion and show you what we got here. All right, let's just get right in. So the stories expansion is going to add quite a bit. It's going to add stories element to the game, as suggested by the title, but it's also going to add 8 additional characters, some more minions, some more bosses, and some more loot, which is really, really nice. Also, the nice same thick box, very sturdy box, the same that we use for the base game. And then on the inside of this one, you have a printing of the map of Ogmore, where the world setting is for Tiny Epic Dungeons. And then down here, we've kind of circled Goblin's Coast because that's the location where this particular story is taking place. All right, so we come up to the Adventurer's Storybook first. That's going to be your rule book for how to implement the stories expansion into the game. And just like I was saying with the deluxe content, the potions and perils, some of this you can kind of just take and you can implement like the loot or the minions, bosses, goblins into the base game without including the stories. Or you can, of course, try your hand at the stories expansion, which is quite a bit of fun. It's going to add kind of like side quests that are going to give your heroes additional obligations while in the dungeon, which kind of add to the challenge, but also add to the intrigue. All right, and we have 8 more miniatures in this box, believe it or not. And here are the 8 additional miniatures, including, of course, Gamelin. All right. Then we have a little bag of wood. This is going to include the additional minion tokens. You're going to need a couple of extra like enemy heart tokens to track the additional enemies, because in the stories expansion, there is a mode in which you're going to go through multiple dungeon levels. In the final dungeon level, you'll actually be facing multiple bosses. So you're going to need some additional heart tokens, and you'll also need this additional boss token. And then the A and B kind of nondescript tokens here represent the different objectives for the story cards that you'll have. Those will come into play with those story cards. All right, let's dig into the bosses and additional characters. So you're going to have the Tinkerer and the Mind Lasher as your 2 additional bosses introduced in the stories expansion. And then you've got 8 additional characters to double your character roster, adding just a ton more variability. And again, we have the quick reference guide for the icons on the back of those as well. All right, and then here we have Mighty Goblin and Spelly Goblin. These are the 2 new goblins added. Mighty is particularly tough, a fully armored goblin, 7 armor, which is going to make him quite difficult to defeat. And we have a bunch of new loot, including some new sets. A rogue set and a spellcaster set. This spellcaster set is quite fun to mix with some of the other sets from the base game, like the Lion set, kind of creating a cross-classing of like a warrior wizard. That's a lot of fun. Or a rogue wizard even. Dungeon map, some bedrolls, of course, right? The Everlit torch is now featured as an actual item in the game, which allows you to explore dungeon rooms before entering them, which is kind of fun. A couple of extra minions, the fire elemental and the golem. And then we have a few extra dungeon rooms that correspond with the story cards, because these story cards are going to most of them are going to have you seek out very specific rooms in the dungeon, like rescue the adventurers. You're going to try and find this card. It'll be shuffled into your dungeon deck, so you'll first have to come across this room in your dungeon, and then you'll have to follow the steps of this card to rescue those adventurers. So you have a bunch of different objectives here to try out. Those are a lot of fun. All right, so that is everything. That is all the content for Tiny Epic Dungeons with the Tiny Epic Dungeons Stories expansion. I hope you enjoyed going through all that with me. Thank you for joining me. And all right, I'll see you on the Kickstarter.